Oh no! Oh crap! We're live. I almost cursed. I don't want to.
You almost
Anger.
cursed within 1 second.
I don't want to anger our new ownership group because I don't want that being the first impression of me. Them seeing me just dropping the f bomb on our first mannequin show in a couple weeks.
Once they see the first episode, I'm pretty sure that we're already on the chopping block. So
Yeah. No,
it
there's this
doesn't matter.
definitely.
Doesn't
There's no
matter.
way this one's gonna last.
It's been what, 3 weeks since we did a show?
It's I say 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks technically.
Okay.
I decided after the last show that as long as we go once a month, I'm good. I think just calling ourselves a monthly show, that's fine. If we happen to do more than that, then great. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
and of course
look,
we
if people can't find us on the Mannequin Chill, we are on several other podcasts. Between us, we are on roughly 67 other podcasts / YouTube shows.
Yeah, and if YouTube's your thing, obviously if you're watching this on YouTube, that's one way. It's also on Twitter, it's also on Facebook. But if you're watching this on YouTube, check out Dynasty Trades in 5. That's where Shane and I do our YouTube stuff. So check that out. Definitely a growing channel. We're enjoying it, getting to branch out and doing some different things. But today we're gonna stick with some topics that I put in the post earlier. We always say we're gonna like market when we're gonna do the show, like advertise it. Hey, we're gonna be live on this day, this time. And we never do that. We just randomly hit go live, and then we're
Yeah.
here. So I had some topics. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to bring up before we get into those. I actually have 2 questions that I've bookmarked, and then a list of topics that I wanted to cover and get your thoughts on. But if you had anything, you can start.
No, I was excited for these topics because they're both hot button issues that I can probably get myself in trouble for saying
Perfect.
something insensitively stupid.
That's the kind of
So
show we want. Insensitively stupid stuff from Shane.
that's what we can do.
Let's get into the questions. I had 2 questions. One was from Huntrell10 on Twitter. He said his excitement with the 2021 rookie quarterbacks has faded. With what we know today, how do you rank them? How do you fall them in your tiers? I mean, real quick, touch on them. I know I have some thoughts, but you can go first.
I,
2021 rookie quarterbacks, you still buying? You still selling? Does it matter? Where you at?
I'm still buying ish. I'm not going out of my way to though, and anyone that comes and offers me a decent haul for Trevor Lawrence can have him. I almost pulled off a trade the other night, which basically was like the 101 and Carson Wentz and a second round draft pick for Lawrence and Jerry Jeudy, and I convinced myself that that's a fine tap out. As far as rankings, I don't want to give Lance the 1 just because he didn't play like everyone else is doing. He's the mystery box, right? We saw 2 good games from him, so that's all we know. I'd have to say it's probably still Lawrence, Justin Fields / Lance, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones. So it hasn't moved at all since last year, despite of 1 year data point. So clearly I'm not putting a ton of stock in the 1 season I saw. I think Mac Jones has showed us that he can be a starting quarterback in the NFL. He'll be an excellent quarterback too on many fantasy teams. Zach Wilson struggled on a bad offense. Lawrence, the hiring he got, I am happy with Doug Peterson. I would have been more happy with Byron Leftwich, obviously, because that would have meant Trent Baalke was gone, which would have meant that there was an organizational change. But given the other choices, I'll take Doug Peterson. But the problem is you're not getting much of a discount on these guys, so you can't really buy on them. I mean, Justin Fields actually scored and produced last year, and Lance, everybody's in love with Lance, so you can't get a discount on those guys. I guess if you could get a discount at Trevor Lawrence, go for it.
Here's the issue. I think that where they fall right now in the ADP, like where you would put them in your overall tiers if you're doing a startup, it doesn't look too much different from last year, but the value is totally different on the actual market. But where you have to take them in a startup, because again, this is February. We're 7 months away from another game. So, of course, the early values are going to favor the players that are seen to have a little more insulation, a little more upside, a little more room to grow. You get on the clock in a startup, you're probably going to see somebody taking Zach Wilson over Derek Carr, something like that. And they're just going to favor the player that has a little value room to grow. a little insulation because they're not going to lose their job. Something weird isn't going to happen in the draft where the Jets draft another quarterback in the top 10. Yeah, that's probably unlikely. So I think people feel more safe at this point. But like you did a bunch of startups last year, and I know there were a couple drafts where it's like, hey, I'm going to trade up and I'm going to start my startup draft with 2 rookie quarterbacks, right? And you're not doing that this year, even though where they go in the startup draft, you're probably still going to see Justin Fields go in like the top 20 or higher picks in a startup draft. Sometimes still in the first round. I've seen one where he goes in the first round of the startup. Now it was a 14-teamer, so there's a little more scarcity on the quarterback side. But like once you get to like QB 9 or 10, you're sitting there going, okay, Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, Russell Wilson or Trey Lance. And it's just quarterback after quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. Deshaun Watson, we'll talk about him a little later. A lot of people probably would take Lance or Fields or Lawrence over Deshaun Watson just because they don't want to take any of that risk. Now, by September, that could look completely foolish or it could look absolutely brilliant. But at this point, I think they're still valued high enough in a startup to where it feels like they all lost a ton of value other than Mac Jones. But if you actually went through and it's like, yeah, they're pretty much all top 20 quarterbacks still. And a couple of them are still in the top 12. I think in DLF's latest ADP, 3 rookies from last year are still in the top 12.
Yeah.
So
it's one of the few times that the fantasy community is sensible and not overreacting off a bad, not great rookie season for rookie.
But I think they are, though. I think the issue is last year, if you would have had Trevor Lawrence, what you could have asked for him in a trade, even though he was still QB7 or QB8 last year, it was double what you could ask for right now. Now you can put him on the block in your league and go, well, hey, DLF ADP says Trevor Lawrence is QB9 or QB10. And the person trading for him might say, I've had somebody flat out say, I don't think he's any good. I don't even want him. Like, I won't even trade you like Jalen Hurts straight up for him. And so I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but the point is he doesn't have the same name cachet and market value that they did a year ago. Does that mean you buy? Does that mean you sell?
Well, yes. I just, while you were doing that, I wanted to look up the DLF Trade Finder, one of the many great tools at DLF. Go subscribe. Hey, Betspert. Trevor Lawrence for a 2022 first and a 2023 first. That's definitely a discount. Trevor Lawrence and A.J. Dillon for Chase Edmonds and a 2022 first and a 2022 second is definitely a discount. So, yeah, actually, I guess it looks like I need to go get some more Lawrence. Problem with me is I already have him on 30% of my rosters. So if he's going to fail, I don't think I want to go much higher than that. But if you believed in him last year, I guess it actually is a really good time to go get you some Lawrence on your roster.
Yeah, and I think you already mentioned it, but Lance is getting a benefit of not playing. People are basically discounting the fact that he didn't get exposed at all. So it feels like he didn't lose as much value. It's still kind of like an incomplete, which means you're just going to have a lot of the same people that were on Lance last year. They're going to double down this year and say the same thing. There isn't a narrative or an argument that can go the other way. At the same time, you look at Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson's rookie year. I posted this poll. I haven't actually checked back on the poll, but it was pretty much 50-50 last I checked. Who was worse for their quarterback on a rookie contract, Adam Gase or Urban Meyer? Well, who do you think was worse?
I'm guessing Adam Gase because he was just no. Urban Meyer.
I think the sentiment was it's Urban Meyer, but he's gone after 1 year. So after 3 years, I think people are still hoping that it's not Urban Meyer, but is there a chance that what happened with Urban Meyer did damage that can't be recovered? And when I say that, I'm not saying Trevor Lawrence can't be good. Trevor Lawrence has to become Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers to justify where he was going last year. So to understand, he has to jump up 5 tiers to get there. I mean, he was I did these numbers for our Patreon that out of the quarterbacks that threw the ball more than 200 times, Trevor Lawrence was the worst quarterback in the league. Bar none. Worse than Zach Wilson. The worst. Literally ranked almost last in every meaningful efficiency category. Now, he did run a little bit, which was good. So you have that. Hey, he can run the ball. He can probably have a 400, 450, maybe 500-yard rushing season, which is good. But he just didn't get any help from his weapons. But everything he did was just bleak. It looked like Sam Darnold, right? You're kind of going like, remember the narrative after Darnold leaving the Jets? Well, maybe he gets into a competent offense with some weapons. He can be okay. You know how many quarterbacks have been good or at least looked okay and put up stats in an offense that were just as bereft of talent as the Jags were last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my concern. It isn't that Lawrence isn't good, but I'm almost to the point where if he's garnering top 12 prices like the ADP says, and you're saying differently based on the trade finder,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
willing to bet against him, and I'll buy back in at the peak price next year if he smashes. If he has a top 15 season next year and everyone's back in, I'll buy back in at the market price. See what I'm saying? But like if I can get Russell Wilson plus or something like that right now, I'll do it. I know we disagree on Russell Wilson. Deshaun Watson, same thing. I'll definitely take the risk on Watson over Lawrence if I can get the plus. Easy. Not even close.
Well, yeah. So last year, coming into the season, I was super high on Lawrence. Obviously, I don't think I was alone in that assessment. I had him over Burrow, Dak, guys like that. Obviously, Russell Wilson. But now, yeah, if someone were to come to me and they want to give me Burrow for him, okay, he's all yours, straight up.
No, I think that's not. I think you have to take the risk on the other side. But I offer you Lawrence for Derek Carr and a 23 first. You taking the Lawrence side?
Yeah, I'll take the Lawrence side on that.
Cousins and 23 first.
Still taking the Lawrence side.
Rodgers and a 23 first.
Probably taking the Lawrence side.
Okay.
Probably.
Watson, and you give a 23 first with Watson, and I give you a second.
No. I'm holding Watson there.
Okay. I mean, I think that those are the decisions. Now, how about Jalen Hurts and a 23 first?
That's going to depend on my mood.
Changes the manic part of this pair.
That's going to depend on the week, how I feel about Jalen Hurts that particular week, because he is a roller coaster of emotions and of stats. I don't like giving up the additional first, so I'd stick with Lawrence.
Okay, so let's phrase this differently, though. What would you say the odds if you had to make a bet? So, plus 150 would be a slight odds in your favor, right? If you win. What are the odds Trevor Lawrence outscores Jalen Hurts next year in fantasy? 5-1, maybe, if that. I mean, assuming we can't predict who's going to get hurt. If you just said both guys are going to play at least a dozen games, who scores more points?
Yeah, it's not great because it's going to be Jalen Hurts because that rushing ability, even if the passing game doesn't improve at all, it's just going to take off, and the Eagles are okay with that. As much as Lawrence is sneaky athletic because he's white, so that's what we call white people that are athletic, sneaky athletic. But he's definitely not going to be rushing for 800 yards next year and 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and Hurts probably, he almost had 1,000 this year if you factor in he missed a couple games. He had a high ankle sprain. Who knows how many he might have gotten if he didn't have that. But, let's just assume the thing with Hurts is people don't, and this is going to get into another topic. People are scared of the unknown. They're scared. I play Dynasty, scared of being left holding the bag. Like, they don't want to be the guy that went all in on Jalen Hurts and has him on 20% of their Superflex teams, and then he gets benched midseason and his value's destroyed. Like, that's the fear. But, honestly, what is that outcome that you can't wade through? That could happen where he gets benched for a game or his job becomes in flux. But that's just assuming that once that happens, he's completely done for the rest of his career. If the opposite happens, let's say he has a decent year. Let's say he has another year where the Eagles get in the playoffs, and they're not at a point where they have 3 first-round picks and they can draft his replacement. And assuming they don't do it this year, then they're kind of like this inflection point where it's like, okay, do I give Hurts one more year because he's still on a rookie deal? It would make sense to not give up on him when he's on the last year of his deal. Now, you're not going to probably extend him if you don't think he's going to be your future. But I think there's a decent shot that if they commit to Hurts through this year where he had a ton of hate, they had all these picks, and he just has a decent year. If you can get yourself 2 years of Hurts versus Lawrence plus a 23 first, I think that's a smash win. So I think that's a deal you can explore, but that's the price, right? Like, if you have Lawrence and you want to move off, you need to move off for an aggressive 2-for-1, preferably that includes a 23 first. Nothing short of that. None of it. You throw in a second. Instead of the 23 first, how about you give me Michael Gallup or, a second round valued receiver? No, it's got to be the hammer, 2-for-1. I'll give you the security, Shane, because you know what? Trevor Lawrence is going to be an NFL starter in 2030. Don't you know that?
Yeah, so here's a problem, right? Just thinking
8
about
years from now,
security.
he's going to start. Jalen Hurts will not.
If Hurts and Lawrence both have a bad year next year, who's more apt to not be a starter again in the league? Hurts will have at least had
I
one
I
successful
agree.
season under his belt, as opposed to Lawrence having two poor seasons. And I guess we're getting ahead of ourselves. Obviously, we don't know that he's going to, but it's definitely that outcome is in the spectrum now, where you thought. Obviously, he was a rookie, so you didn't think he'd come out and be the MVP. You just thought you'd see, I don't know, maybe Joe Burrowish in his rookie year, just some better play, anything really. I would have been okay with Justin Fields type level play, to be quite honest with you, and he looked absolutely horrible the first couple games under Nagy.
Yeah, we could go back and forth, but I think the idea is, Lawrence doesn't have the same market value, but I think there's creative ways where you can move off of him if you want to. And that's where I'm at. I mean, I know we didn't get into some of the other players, but I think he's the highlight of this group. I'm fine moving off, but that's what it's going to take. It's a 2-for-1. One of the pieces needs to be a 23 first, and I'm willing to go down the road of I'll take the risk. I'll take Rodgers. I'll take Hurts. I'll take Watson. Anybody you feel a little queasy about and you're worried about what your lineup's going to look like in 3 years, I'm willing to do the 2-for-1. I mean, so that basically means I'm probably selling Lawrence. I'm not really buying because I think at this point there's other players that are in the same value range that I like better that I can probably get plus. So
Yeah, for the final thing on that, yes, and that speaks to it. For the cost that I'd have to pay, I'd rather go another way than the uncertainty around Lawrence right now. Like I said, I have him on 30% of my rosters, so it is what it is on those rosters. I'm probably not going to sell at a marked discount. I'm just going to hope that he bounces back, but I'm not going out of my way to add him to any rosters.
cool. All right, next topic. This one, we could probably do like a 2-hour show on this, but we'll try to keep it to maybe 5 minutes or so on this question. Vienna 1993 asks the fading of 23 picks. I mentioned that in the list of topics. We kind of talked about this on one of our Dynasty trades in 5, where we talked about the 2023 picks and why they're valued where they are, why we're valuing them where we are. But, you talked about this on a video that we recorded, but we haven't released yet. But what do you feel the market is on the 23 picks right now? Of like, they're almost going for like the chalk price of what the best draft picks should go. Like everyone's kind of assuming that any 23 pick is really like a 103-ish value. It's like, yeah, you're getting a little bit of extra benefit if you could get the 101. Like that's part of the lottery that you're buying into. But it feels like you're paying a really expensive price for the lottery ticket versus the $1 ticket. So, I mean, what's your thoughts on kind of fading them as a alternative strategy since everybody pretty much is chasing them?
Man, so it feels like that's what you should do, right? Because you don't want to do what everyone else is doing. And then I was listening to a little Dynasty Dummies podcast today where they were talking about the wide receiver class in this draft class. And after listening to that and thinking about the running backs and the quarterbacks in this class, literally like 104 is the last draft pick I feel comfortable with getting a true impact player, at least one that I feel like, all right, I know these are the top 4. So I understand the desire of going, well, I got the 105. Even if I got the 105 next year, I can go and straight up trade this pick for that. And it's going to be better because it's a better class. I mean, we've been wrong on rookies before, right? We'll give this speech. Anything can happen over a year. 3 of those guys decide that they want to come back for their senior season. One of those guys get injured, and all of a sudden the 2023 class isn't as deep as it was today. Problem is you can't afford to buy the 2023 picks in most leagues, not in the leagues we play in. If you can still afford to pay for them, if you can still afford to get them, then go for it. But I think your better bet at this point is just get a bunch of 2022s, to be quite honest with you. And even if you don't make the picks, try to trade them for players. Yeah, just looking at Talon Lee's message there. He hoarded 2023 picks for 2 years. He's got 7 firsts. There's a lot of leagues like that where people they will not let go of those firsts regardless of what you get them. So you've got to go at them and go, okay, well, if I have a 2023 first, maybe I can get overpaid for it. Maybe I can go get a player that maybe the rest of the league doesn't value it, or excuse me, the rest of my league doesn't value it at a 2023 price. can I get Dalvin Cook for a straight up 2023 first? Because he's a 26-year-old running back. Can I sell that story to the guy that's got 3 of the 2023 firsts? Because he wants to keep the arms race up with the guy that has 7 of them, and he's doing everything he can to get, at least 4 or 5 of them. I think I'm going to end up going the opposite way on those 2023 picks, just because I have a feeling I'll be able to sell them at a premium, because we already know we can.
Yeah, I think so. We could dive really, really deep into this topic, get into some game theory principles on, okay, first of all, my approach is if you're in a lot of leagues, I really think we're at the point now where the highest they're going to be valued is right now until you get to the season. And then you're going to have complete boomer bust shots to maybe sell these picks, or, nobody's going to even want to buy them during the season because they're so expensive that the market value starts to fall a little bit. I do think with any draft, you lose value on the picks once you have to actually make the picks. So I'm like Talon. I've hoarded probably an average of 3 first rounders in 23 in every league, almost across my leagues. I'm over 2x in terms of how many I have average on each league. But I have to really be honest with myself in which one of those leagues I'm going to actually be able to get paid for the ones that I'm going to hold until next year's rookie draft. There's going to be some where I think I'm going to end up with one of the top 2 or 3 picks, and it ends up being a mid to late first. And I probably should have sold it based on the market in that league. And then vice versa. There's going to be some others where I trade away and I go, oh my gosh, you're trading me like 2 really core starters during the season for one random pick. And that pick ends up being the 102 or the 103. And maybe it's not even my pick. I just maybe bet on the wrong team. Like week 8, someone offers me a trade and I can't turn it down. That pick ends up being the 102. 6 months later, I regret trading away that 102. I think that's where you have to really look at your league and say, okay, there's some leagues, the value of these picks, Shane, we're in some leagues like that, where we're in leagues with each other. If I'm in a league with you and I have a 23 first, you're not getting it, period. There's probably less than 15 players you could offer me, and I would actually do the pick. Dalvin Cook, I would laugh at that. Now, other people are probably laughing at me going, oh my gosh, you wouldn't give up a random 23 first for Dalvin Cook? Dalvin Cook can help you win this year. And, that gets into a bigger discussion on, your roster construction and how you want to approach winning. But like, if you're in a league with me, you're not getting my 23 first. I'm going to wait until where I think the leverage is the highest, and then I'll trade it away. There's other leagues where I still see people post in our Patreon chat, oh, I traded away Brandon Ayuk for a 23 first, a deal like that. And it's like, well, first of all, I wouldn't buy really a receiver unless they're one of the top 6 or 8 receivers for a straight up 23 first. But aside from that, you're trading basically like a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, which is even worse because that's not a scarce asset. You're giving away a really scarce asset with the pick for a receiver that has maybe 15, 20 other guys in his same tier. Just makes no sense to make that move right now. So kind of back to the logic a little bit, there is a bet you have to make. Some leagues, those 23 firsts are going to be like gold. I know I saw Troy's comment. He did this for the 21 class, supposed to be the greatest class ever. It wasn't. I disagree with Troy. Last year, if you had one of the top 8 or 10 picks in 2021, you were sitting on a gold mine, right? I mean, if you had the 104 last year and you could have got Lawrence, Fields, Lance, Chase, Pitts, people would pay you for that. So that's kind of what you're hoping for. Yeah, it looked in hindsight, if you drafted Trevor Lawrence and you passed up on Chase or you didn't trade down, it's looking bad. But you weren't wrong for holding that 21 pick. It was what you did with it when the value was really, really finite, right, is where you maybe faded it. So that's the thing, is it really just depends. And I think that's part of what you're doing if you bought the 23 picks. It's hoping that there's somebody in your league that has to have this tier next year. And that's pretty much it. I think your point was, you're going to be able to get a deal during the season. You may not be able to pass it up. But also, the thing is, if you're in a league where they're overvalued, maybe you go the other way. Maybe you take a few leagues and say, you know what, I'm going to bet against this class. I'm going to bet against that most of the players bust. And I'll take the points now and try to go out it that way. I think that's the way you have to navigate it because they're getting really, really expensive. I mean, we just got offered in a startup a 4th round pick for a 23 first straight up. Wow. Like, that's how high it is. And you're going, oh my gosh, a 4th round startup pick and someone wants to give me a 23 first for that pick. Like, that's where it's at. That used to be round 7, round 8 in years past. And now it's round 4, round 5. I mean, it's too high.
Little expensive for my taste. Look, at this point, it might behoove you to just trade some of those random 2023 firsts. Look at the teams, obviously, that they're attached to, try to do some guesstimations, and just trade them for multiple 2022 firsts. Like Talon, we were looking at earlier, got 7 of them next year. I might take one of those that I think, or 2 of those that I think are going to be the worst, and just trade those 2 for 4 first round draft picks this year. Because at the end of the day, you do want the volume in the first round. We know we're not going to hit on every pick. You just want to increase your chances. Look, still poke around in the leagues because, we still see it in our patron chat. Some people get the trade Brandon Ayuk for a 2023 first. Something like that happens. It should never happen, but it happens in the real world. So give it a shot and just see. Look, I play in a league with a lot of people that are in lots of leagues, but I'm still trying. I just sent Mike Evans for 2023 first in one of my leagues to everyone in the league. Worst it's going to happen is they're all going to say no, and then at least I know the market's set. Mike Evans is clearly not worth a 2023 first to let me approach this a different way.
Yeah, I think one strategy I'll be taking is once everything rolls over to next year and the 24 picks become available, if you're really chasing the 23 first and I have one and I choose that that's a league where I'm going to maybe pivot from it, okay, trade me I'm not going to trade you my 23 first for the 108 straight up, but maybe the 108 and a 24 first. Give me the 2 for 1. And that's me betting against the other 2 classes around the 23 first. That's a 22 pick and a 24 pick. And maybe I'll just bet against it in that league. Now, you can do this easily when you're in 30, 40 leagues. You can say, hey, I'm not going to have any 23 picks in this league. That's fine. I'm going to have how many other shots, at that apple in another league because I'm going to cord the picks in that league. So let's move on. We had a couple questions in here.
But I did like Talon's comment. Lee. And that's kind of our point. What we always discuss with draft picks is you don't, just because you have the picks doesn't mean you have to make them. They're just a chip to trade for something else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's definitely right. They're going to be assets that you can move over the next year. It's just, when do you move them? What do you move them for? When are you getting the best equity? So sure, that'll be a topic we'll talk about more for sure. Another question we got here. Let's see. It was one about Dak Prescott, and let me find it real quick while I'm looking. Thoughts on Deshaun Watson? I wanted to make sure we cover that in this episode. I know you were way off him, but now it's like, okay, everyone's back in because there's 7 months until we play a game.
Yeah, and partly that, and I mean, nothing else has happened in a year, right? Like, my biggest concern when things like this happen is that maybe he'll get arrested, maybe he'll go to prison, but it's been basically a full year since these allegations have come out. He hasn't been arrested, which makes me kind of thinking I'm not a lawyer. I'm just using my little pea brain here. But if he was going to be arrested or if something like that was going to happen, I have a feeling that we would have heard about it or it would have already happened. This feels like it's just going to go the civil way, and not to make a judgment on him as a person, whatever, you know what I mean? That's not what I'm here to do. But as a strictly fantasy football asset and a producer, he's a top 4 quarterback in the league. That's a guy I want. So if anyone's still off of him because of, they don't like him as a person, or if they think that he's going to go to prison, I think you definitely want to reach out to them and take Watson off their hands from them and help them ease that burden that they feel on their soul by carrying Watson on their roster.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many other ways you can say it. He's basically Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. He's as good as that. He just has these questions. And so it just depends on how much risk do you want to take? How much do you want to pay? I think there's appropriate ways to get to him and pivot to Watson without feeling like you completely destroyed things. Like, I'm not pivoting down from Justin Herbert to go get Deshaun Watson. But if I'm in a range where it's like, okay, someone is interested in Trey Lance, or someone is interested in Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence or even Dak Prescott or Burrow, like, there's a price for each one of those where I'd be willing to do it. Just depends on how much risk you want to take. If you have a moral problem with Watson, then I understand. Just don't want him. Like, that's not part of what we're talking about when we're talking about like dynasty strategy and ways to acquire him. But from a talent standpoint and his NFL production and fantasy production, like, he's right up there at the very top. You got to figure, I don't know, maybe the year off might even do him good. You know what I mean? Like, he might come back refreshed. I mean, who knows? But there's some bets to be made. And I think you can be aggressive because there's still a lot of people out there talking about, hey, I don't want the guy. He's a criminal. Whatever it is. We're not going to go into it. But there's people that are fading again, and I just don't understand it. So Let's see. We had a Dak Prescott comment. Let me see if I can find it.
It's
It was
basically who are you drafting after Dak Prescott as your QB7? So I'm not sure what the ADP he was looking at because I'm looking at Superflex. I got Dak as the 5, which just seems way too high for me. January
Here it is.
2022 Superflex
Rock and
Dynasty
talk.
ADP.
He said pivoting from Dak to Herbert, Kyler, or Josh Allen. How much do you have to pay on top? So I guess the first question is, if you have Dak Prescott, are you in a hurry to get up to like Kyler Murray? I think definitely Kyler and Dak is a question. I mean, Kyler has a higher fantasy ceiling, but I'm not in a hurry to add to Dak to get Kyler. Maybe Herbert, maybe Allen, but still, I mean, what would you pay, or how would you look at that?
Yeah, so definitely, I'm fine, content just sitting out on Kyler, and I loved Kyler, but I just saw too many things last year where there was too many issues for me that concerned me. The not running enough. I need you to run more, Kyler, and just he scored fine. It's just he didn't seem elite. He's not in Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. One guy I'm forgetting tier. Problem with that is that I don't want to decimate my roster just to move up a tier at quarterback. We're talking 3 fantasy points a game, which is a good amount, but I don't want to give up a wide receiver 1. So I'm probably going to poke and try to see, all right, well, can I give you Dak in a second for Herbert? Can I give you Dak in a couple seconds for Herbert? I'm going to do everything in my power not to give up a first. I'll give you Dak in 3 of my seconds for Herbert. How about that? But if push came to shove and I want to make that pivot and I have the assets to do it, I'm going to add a first. Player-wise, wide receiver 2. If I can, I'd much prefer a running back 2 because, well, they're a running back and they're running backs. But if I had to, yeah, first.
Interesting. I just think definitely he's a tier down. Especially with Dak. Dak hasn't run. He's had less than 8% of his rushing share for his points the last 2 years. So he's not really a running quarterback anymore either. But I'm just not really interested. If I have Dak locked in, especially if I have another good quarterback, I'm just not in a hurry to really pay that price to go up. You know what I mean? Like I'd pay, someone said they got offered 108 in Dak for Herbert and they turned it down. Like I can understand that. You know what I mean? That's a 108. But if it's like I have to give up a 23 first or I have to give up another starter, a top 24 receiver or something like that, I'm just not, that doesn't necessarily do it for me. The pick, that pick range would probably be right around the same. That'd be the max I'd probably consider paying, would be that pick range, like a late first. And from a process standpoint, that doesn't even feel like you really want to do it. You know what I mean? Like you'd rather just have that pick, see what else you can get for it versus do a 2-for-1.
It's a get your guy. It's a get your guy trade. And it's definitely taking a bet on, all right, well, but it doesn't matter who we say here. I believe Allen is going to be a top 3 quarterback for the next 5 years. And not just top 3, like he's going to be separated from the QB7, like Dak is probably going to be, or the QB8 by a fairly wide margin. Because if you make that trade and then Allen only outscores Dak, or whoever, Kyler only outscores Dak by, 0.25 a game, and you gave up a first, then you lost. Now, on a conviction level, I'm fairly convicted on Herbert, Allen, obviously Mahomes, and Lamar Jackson over Dak as being significantly better scorers and fantasy producers and continuing to be. So I'm fine with that. But yeah, the 108 and Dak probably wouldn't be enough for me to move off Herbert, to be honest.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, yeah, Dak took a little bit of a step back last year, but I went through for the Patreon and did those efficiency ratings, and Dak is extremely good. I mean, he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the league. So if he ever can get his rushing share back up to even like 10, 11%, like he's going to be right there to be a top 5 quarterback. So it's not a guarantee that all of those guys that were named automatically score more points than Dak. I mean, that's not something that you just lock in and say, well, they're better than him. He's a little bit older, but it's not like he's 35. You know what I mean? So I actually think he's probably more on the buy side, which doesn't mean I want to go pay the market price for him. I think there's even more equitable quarterbacks you can buy. At the same time, I don't want to trade away my Dak shares for a tier up when he's like the tier 1B. So it's just not a great it's not a great time, I think, to make that deal. Even if I have to add even a 112, it just doesn't feel like I want to do it. So Shout out to a lot of people in the chat that have said, hey, love your content. Appreciate all of that. I'd put all the comments up there, but I'd probably have to take like 10 minutes to go through and acknowledge everybody. So appreciate that, everyone in the chat. Next time we'll try to do a little more of an interactive show. But I did want to touch on Calvin Ridley, Shane. I've seen a lot of topics on Calvin Ridley, and it seems like if you search Calvin Ridley and you just look for like dynasty related content, it's 80% of people just debating about like mental health issues and, you know, if it's legitimate or not. And, you know, you get some really nasty comments. You get people saying, you get some Falcons fans in there saying like, this guy turned on us. He quit. He's a quitter. Cause it sounds like they may end up just trading him away. And then you get people going like, you need to respect him. You need to let him take all the time he needs. And I mean, for dynasty, I get that. I mean, we're playing a game here though. So if I have Calvin Ridley in dynasty, I hate to say it, but I don't want to give him all the time he needs. He could be out 2 years. You know what I mean? Like we have to, at some point, we have to decide what you're going to do. What type of bet are you going to make? And my stance is this, and I'll be completely honest and blunt. I think there's stuff that probably happened with him that none of us know. So for judging him on that or trying to say, well, he quit or he doesn't want to play football or he hates the Falcons and he's trying to force a trade. Okay. I think we're just speculating on that, but it's a new year. Calvin Ridley's going into, his free agency year, right? And I think that will speak volumes. I'm just going to leave it there. He's going to be a free agent. This is his 5th year. What happens in the 5th year? The contracts bump up for your first rounder. He's going to be making pretty good cash this year. Then he's going to hit free agency. So let's see what happens. We'll probably get some rumblings in the next couple months what the plans are. Do they trade him? Does he plan on coming back? But I think once you do that, if he announces, hey, he's coming back, the Falcons traded him for a first-round pick somewhere else, his dynasty value is going to be pretty cemented, right? It's going to drop right back into the top 24, top 20. Yes. What are you doing now, though? Knowing that this is a weird situation. This isn't like a torn ACL where you know kind of what's going to happen if a player comes back. Assume we know nothing. What do you do?
Oh, I'm definitely trying to acquire him. If I can, I'd really try to stretch it out to my rookie draft because I just know it. I'll be able to ship off multiple seconds and get Calvin Ridley, which will just look ridiculous next year when he's dropping 20 points a game or more likely 15 points a game. But whatever, I'll still take it. You think it's
too late though? Then if you drop, I mean, that's like
that's the problem. Is I think if you wait till then, there might be there's definitely going to be news before then. So that's the biggest problem. So hopefully you have a rookie draft like upcoming this week. Otherwise, I'm comfortable giving up. 2023 first again, but I'm comfortable giving up 2022 firsts for him. There's not a wide receiver in this class, maybe Treylon Burks, that I would think is going to be better than Calvin Ridley. I'm just assuming he's going to come back. It's a mental health issue, which is tough to deal with, but typically if you get with the right people, that's something, that can get in line. And I would think that his health coverage is probably pretty good. So hopefully he gets straight. The talent's there, look, we bet on players like Antonio Brown in the past because the talent, right? If Calvin Ridley was Jalen Reagor, I'd be ready to move on. I'd be like, well, I'm probably not going to take that cost on or try to take that risk on, but I'm fine taking the risk on for him. I'll give up a first. People come at me with players. I might try to trade them other questionable players off my roster, like Michael Gallup, DJ Chark, and just find a third triumptive there and just give them all 3 of my risky players to get Calvin Ridley because he's that much better than each of those players. So I'm comfortable getting Calvin Ridley. Look, we thought he had a chance at being a wide receiver 1 last year. Clearly, even before he went out, that probably wasn't going to happen. Even if he played the full year. But he's still at worst a high-end wide receiver 2. So 27 years old, about to turn 28 next year. Still a couple years left where, look, his value is not going to probably increase except for that spike when he gets traded or re-signs with Atlanta and him come to some beautiful long-term agreement. So, yeah, if you're going to buy him, though, you definitely need to trade for him now.
Yeah, he had 52 targets in 5 games. So his market share was up there. I mean, his market share was elite before he went out. So, I mean, would he have been a wide receiver 1? Probably not, because usually you have to have like an efficient quarterback to be a wide receiver 1. But basically if you look at the past, it's hard to crack the top 10, top 12, unless you're just given a boatload of targets. But he kind of feels like he could have had like a Deontay Johnson type season where He just is going to get 100 catches and 1,100, 1,200 yards just because he's getting so many targets. But at the same time, like, I'm not moving 23 first for Calvin Ridley. I guess my breaking point would be assuming that we kind of have a clue of where these rookie drafts are going to go. Let's just, for argument's sake, I'll throw this out there to you. Assume in the first round of 2022, we're going to get 3 running backs that everyone sees them in the first round, right? And maybe I'm being a little conservative or maybe I'm being a little aggressive, but 3 quarterbacks. Okay, so we're going to get 6 receivers in the first round of Dynasty draft, Shane. You don't know who they are. You don't know where they're going to get drafted, but let's also assume that you probably have 6 receivers that are all top 50 or higher picks in the NFL draft. So pretty good capital. Like, you're not scared that, hey, this is a late second, early third guy getting moved up. Maybe you have 5 first-round receivers. I was just looking at the NFL.com mock draft. They have 6 receivers going in the first round. So may not happen, but let's just assume we're close. Let's assume we're 2020, where we have all the receivers go in the first, and then we have T. Higgins, Michael Pittman go right at the beginning of the second. So we have like 6 to 8 legitimate receivers that go in that late first round range. Where do you slot Ridley in? Like right now, without even knowing the names, just your pulse on the class. Wide receiver 2, 3, 4, 5.
Absolute worst is wide receiver 2.
So you're considering, I mean, the thing is, I think the wide receiver 2 is going to go off the board before the 106 in a lot of leagues.
Maybe, but I'm attaching names to these wide receivers. I told you not. I know you told me not to, but I can't because I know in some order it's going to be like David Bell, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. Who else can't separate? That's going to be in the
Burks.
class.
You don't like
Traylon Burks is the only
Burks.
one because he sounds like right now the most complete prospect to me, and I think he'll go off the board first. He's the only one that I think comfortably, or not even comfortably, I would debate taking over Calvin Ridley. I wouldn't take any of the other guys. I think the rest of the other guys, and I could be wrong. I'm not a rookie scout. I'm just going off of what I've seen, what I've heard. I don't want any of them over Ridley, even with the 6-year age discount. Yeah,
it's interesting because I think if you put no names there and you just said, I'm going to give you a receiver, that mock I was looking at, they have 3 wide receivers going in the top 11. So basically you have like 3 receivers going in the top 15. Historically, that's pretty good. If you told me right now that you would give me a receiver, and I'm not even going to worry about the name or the profile, because if you're telling me I'm getting a receiver the NFL is going to pick in the top 15, then more often than not, I'm probably going to like that player. Now, there's some that I haven't liked, but this isn't like pick 28, pick 26. This is a guy that may go 9th overall, 10th overall. If you told me I can get that for Ridley, sight unforeseen, without knowing who it is, but just giving that information, if I told you you're going to get a receiver that's drafted in the top 15 this year, you wouldn't take that for Ridley, because I think there could be 3.
I mean, there could be, but no.
Then we're a little different. I think your threshold of what you would pay is a little higher than mine.
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, here's a comment. Ridley truther, DJ Moore or Ridley. It's not even close. It's not even close. DJ Moore is basically the ceiling of what you would get from Ridley, and he has no questions about it.
And he
doesn't have a great situation.
And he's 6 years younger. I'm not sure about that math, but he's at least 4 years younger. 2.5 years, same difference. 4 years, 6 years, whatever. He's younger.
Yeah, I think that's you're getting into a tier there where it's really not even close. I think Ridley is down more in the range of, if you told me you like Ridley more than DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Evans, Amari Cooper, just because of the age, I could sell it. But then you look at the age and you're like, Ridley's not much younger than Mike Evans or Amari Cooper. It's like,
remember, Ridley so people, I don't think people forget, but Ridley came in as an old prospect because he graduated college in 1996, actually. So
Evans or Ridley right now?
Evans.
All right. Cooper or Ridley right now?
Ridley.
Interesting. Why is that? What's the difference? You just like Evans better than Cooper?
Yeah, straight up as a player. Yeah. He's more consistent and he's better. Just simple.
Amon-Ra.
I mean, part of me wants to take Amon-Ra just so I could trade him immediately. So probably Amon-Ra, because I would just trade him immediately.
Ayuk.
Oh, man. Ayuk, after what he did to us last year. I'm going to have to go Ridley.
Okay. Claypool.
Man, Claypool.
Okay. Judy.
Oh man, I was in on Judy, but there's some scary things. We had Heath Cummings on the show last week with Dynasty Intervention, and he had tweeted about how Jerry Judy's target share was just so severely impacted by Tim Patrick, which is concerning. Judy, because I'm going to be able to flip him for more when they get a quarterback.
All right, last one, Bateman.
Ridley.
Okay. I mean, everyone I named is outside the top 20. So, that not to point out the DJ Moore versus Ridley, but that's really not close if you're just looking at where they tier out. I think my strategy is like if I can get one of those guys, and obviously I play in a ton of leagues, so I'm looking at is okay, how many Ridley shares I have versus Bateman shares, all that kind of stuff. But if you're telling me you're going to offer me Mike Evans straight up, or you're going to offer me Rashad Bateman straight up, or Brandon Ayuk, I may prefer one of those in a given league. Maybe I have a stack with the quarterback, but like it's splitting hairs that I don't think there's a consensus answer. And that just kind of speaks to if you just need another receiver that you don't have any questions about their situation, then take Brandon Ayuk. His quarterback's going to be Trey Lance, and he's going to be in a Shanahan offense. Now that could be a disaster, but at least you have pretty much an idea of what it's going to be. A lot of these other guys you don't know. So I think that's the thing with Ridley. I don't want to buy. Like if you come to me and you say, okay, and then we'll move to the next topic. If you say you're going to give up Claypool for Ridley, I'm not getting any leverage in that deal. I just get a 1-for-1. Like that's me having to make a 50-50 bet against you. I'm not successful in Dynasty because I make 50-50 bets and win. I make 60-40 bets where I'm getting an extra piece, or I make 40-60 bets that I'm very confident on. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something to think about. You don't want to just trade Ridley for 1-for-1 unless you have some sort of method or process behind it. So, all right, last topic, and then we'll go. And maybe we kind of save this really heavy hitting topic for later, but we'll finish out the show with it. Fantasy process managers versus fantasy player managers, Shane. When I just we didn't even pre-discuss this, but it's something I really wanted to bring up. When I said that, like a player manager versus a process manager, what comes to your mind? How would you describe that?
First thing that came to mind is us thinking that we're player evaluation scouts, and we're not. I mean, that's the first thing that came to my mind is, all right, am I guessing on my player evaluation, which quite honestly is more of a subjective thing when you take out the analytics of it, or would I rather manage my teams based on a process where at least if things go wrong, I can point to this specifically and go, well, this is what's wrong in my process, at least. It'd be really difficult for me to do that with a player, except in the case of Trey Sermon. I know what I did wrong and it'll never happen again. But again, that's more of a process thing too, right? That's really ignoring your process and going, all right, well, because Trey Sermon they traded up for him and he's got a good landing spot. Oh, terrible words. I'm going to go ahead and waste a first round pick on him because I have them to burn apparently. So I'm always going to go process over player evaluation.
Yeah. And I think what you just described was ultimately it looks like player evaluation, like behavior of a dynasty manager based on a player, but there was some process behind that. I don't think it was, I'm so convicted on Trey Sermon. I'm so convicted on Trey Sermon after I have all this information in one spot. So I'm convicted on the player, but I'm also convicted on all these other things that make me make a convicted trade. The convicted trade is not, I like this player, I want to buy, or I don't like this player, I want to sell. It's what's behind it. A lot of times I see people posting and they'll take victory laps on Twitter, and it's like putting my money where my mouth is because I've posted about this player 10 times all summer. I got to go buy. And they're paying market price for all these deals, and they're just hoping that they can go back and say, look how smart I was because I paid the market price. If there's a stock, we're trading for $50. You don't want to be the guy that necessarily goes in and pays $50 for every stock that's trading at $50. You want to get some at a discount. You want to find different times where you're buying at a suboptimal price or you're buying in a different way that makes it cheaper. So I think that's the difference is you just describe somebody that ultimately has a process behind. I see a lot of people that are I believe in this player. I liked his film. I'm going to go buy him in Dynasty, right? Or this data says this. I'm going to go buy him in Dynasty, and not looking at the value of where does that player fit inside of like positional leverage? Is he a QB2? Is he an RB2? Is he a wide receiver 3? Is he a low end tight end 1? Like those 4 things that I just mentioned have very, very little difference between the tiers. There's a lot of elasticity within the players in those tiers. So to be so convicted within that subset of players usually is a bad bet. That's where you kind of get into identifying yourself as a process manager. And that's what we talk about a lot here. Like, hey, all these picks are in the same tier. So get out. Don't even get tempted to get caught up in the names. Because when you do that, then you start to develop biases. I don't know. Maybe people are different that haven't played Dynasty as long. But a couple years ago, I became very hardened in terms of actually rooting for specific players, unless I'm going to be completely honest to why I'm rooting for him. Like, hey, I'm a Kentucky fan. The guy went to Kentucky. I'm going to root for him. But I still don't go out and buy him in Dynasty. You know what I mean? And I'm very agnostic when it comes to which players I prefer. It's usually I'm building my roster a certain way. I want to draw as many players from these tiers as I can. I want to accumulate picks and assets by selling players in these tiers. And wherever my roster shakes out, it shakes out. So that's kind of the difference. I don't know if you have any other comments, or maybe we'll get some thoughts on this. But I think it's
No, you said it perfectly. Like you can't look at names really because you get attached to these guys on a personal level for some reason when they're the same dude. Like these are all, just think of them all as generic faces. That, like we were just talking about, like the difference between DJ Moore and Calvin Ridley. Like you like Calvin Ridley better. That shouldn't be why you're holding on to him. Because you're rooting for him. If someone offers you DJ Moore for Calvin Ridley, straight up, you have to take that trade. If there's players that are in the exact same tier and someone wants to trade for him from you, just get a little bit extra. They're the same guy. It does not matter. What matters is the value that you're going to extract from that. Because most of the times, and we've talked about this with wide receiver 2s and 3s, there's going to be a bunch of guys that are all just the same dude. It doesn't matter that they play stylistically different. It doesn't matter that their games are completely different. That doesn't matter. The value and production is what matters. So you want to get, if the production is fairly equal, extract some value out of that from someone else if they're willing to pay for the same production that, they already have.
Well, and just real quick before we end, I'll give everyone kind of an example of what you just mentioned. You just mentioned wide receiver 2s, wide receiver 3s. So if you look at last year, Shane, if you take from wide receiver 13 all the way down to wide receiver 27, you're talking less than 1.8 PPR points per game. So that encompasses most of the wide receiver 2s and already dipping into like almost half of the wide receiver 3s. That's a big chunk, right? Yeah. Now, you might look at those individual players and say, okay, this player and this player produced at the same level. However, this happened to player A and this didn't happen for player B. If it changes next year, that can completely flip. But I think the idea there is because it's so flat within those tiers, understanding that there's bets to be made on all the players in that tier. There's ranges of outcomes that can be super high, super low, all over the map. So if you're going to look at it and say, okay, within that tier, I prefer this player because of this range of outcome. And sometimes that can just be as simple as, well, I prefer this guy because if this happens, I know what the Dynasty community, or I know what his market value is going to do. Not even that he has to be good. It's just, think about a player like Devontae Smith, right? Like, you still maybe want to buy in at Devontae Smith at his price, not because he's going to outproduce the players in his tier, but you could tell yourself in a year, if the Eagles get fed up at quarterback and they go get somebody really good, Devontae Smith could go from, 50% to 90% of the top 8 guys. You know what I mean? So that would be the narrative. But that's not buying on Devontae Smith's talent necessarily. That's buying, you're telling yourself a narrative. You're making a bet against that happening. If it doesn't happen, you may lose. So I think that's why you have to think of things. It's just constant bets, constant ranges of outcomes. And if you think you have an angle, follow it and correlate your decisions and your teams with that too. If you've made a bet on Rodgers going to Denver, you went out and paid market price for Rodgers going to Denver. It makes sense to correlate that with some other move that would be impacted by Rodgers going to Denver, even if it's not obvious to everybody else. And I think that's just something that not a lot of Dynasty people talk about. You hear it a lot in DFS because it's a weekly game. but people struggle talking about it when you're talking about the grand scheme of a whole season or multiple seasons. Rarely do we ever see that kind of stuff discussed. So just want to throw it out there. I know you're about to sleep, so appreciate you, dude. All right, Shane. Final comments.
Final comments. Hey, we're in the fun season, right? This is what we play for. We don't play for the regular season like it's as much as, you know, that's fun and it's great. This is what we play for: roster construction, trading, drafting. This is the fun time, so enjoy it. Don't wish away the time, because this is like I said, this is the best time of the year.
Absolutely. This is the time where you can kind of sit back and digest what happened last year and actually like formulate some strategy and focus on building teams again, versus the last 2 years have just been like scramble mode, like just surviving your team so that they don't completely get, you know, interrupted and tanked. So yeah, it's fun to do some research, do some writing, go back and kind of look at what worked, what didn't look, or what worked and didn't work. I see your face. Yeah, this is the fun time. This is the fun time to strategize and think and make moves based on the long term, make moves based on, you know, some sort of angle or bet that you're making instead of just reacting to the week to week. So
yeah, because
maybe we'll do another show for February. Would that be like less than 3 weeks?
Oh, we definitely can pull that out. We can pull that off. Definitely.
All right. Cool. We'll go Bengals.
Go Bengals. Yes, go Bengals.
Yeah, everyone should be rooting for the Bengals. Come on.
The Rams.
What do you think's going to really happen? Final prediction. Because we're not going to do another mannequin show before the Super Bowl.
Sean McVay's had 2 full weeks to coach to plan against Zach Taylor. So that scares the living daylights out of me, to be quite honest with you. So it's going to go one of 2 ways. The Rams are going to come out and blow their doors off. Like, it's going to be like 28-0 in the first half, because Zach Taylor is going to be just completely confused. And he might even, like, I don't know, punt the ball through his own field for his own what's the word I'm looking for? His own uprights. He's got to kick a field goal against himself. He's going to be so flustered. Or somehow they're going to withstand that, keep the game close, and they're going to win by about 4 points. So let's go Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, we'll end it with 30 seconds of comments. I think Zach Taylor actually is getting undervalued because he experienced the heartbreak of the Super Bowl with Sean McVay. So he's got that there. He knows kind of what he was in that room after that Super Bowl going, I vow to never do this again if I make another Super Bowl. And guess who I'm facing? A guy that was in the room hearing me make those comments. So I think that's something. I'm worried about the Titans were the one team that basically gave the Bengals fits because they can get pressure from the ends and up the middle. That worries me. If it was just Aaron Donald and no pass rushes on the end, I would be, you can scheme for one guy. You know, Burrow can usually beat one guy, but when it's both ends and up the middle, like, I'm worried this could be another Titans game where it's 6-7 sacks, and it's not that you can't win that way, but it just disrupts the drive so often where you're taking a sack on every drive almost.
Yeah.
And you just can't win doing that. But tell you what, the way McVay coached in the last couple games, like, he goes into a shell when they're winning. So I'm not scared if they get up a couple touchdowns. Like, he's going to try to run the clock out, and the Bengals have been able to come back when that happens.
And he's made a bunch of bad decisions. It's just that his players have bailed him out, and that's the one constant we've seen in this playoffs is a lot of bad coaching decisions and players just bailing their coaches out. Look, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that McVay gets his doors blown off, because no one should be that good looking and successful in life.
He's not going to get his doors blown off, but I will say I think people are underrating the fact that if it is a close game at the end, I'll take Joe Burrow and Evan McPherson. So
oh, definitely.
If it's within a score or less in the fourth quarter, then that's kind of where the Bengals have lived and gotten where they have this year. So I think they're just going to turn to it and say, that's where we want to be. We want to be tie game in the fourth quarter. You know, we have the best kicker. We probably have the best quarterback. So we'll just see what happens. So who knows? No predictions, but we'll see. That's it. Another mannequin show in the book, Shane.
Thank you, DLF World. Thank you for everyone watching and chatting with us today. We'll have to do just an all questions for viewers next time, I think.
Yep, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
So plan on 3 weeks, sometime before February. We'll announce it. Maybe we'll give people like a half-hour heads up, and we'll go from there. Later, DLF. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.